last time on Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
What I think is the greatest iteration of Star Trek ever created.
Wow, that's big words.
Thank you very much. I prepared for that. I appreciate that, there, Mr. Christopher.
And now the conclusion.
And who's going to be paying for all this holosuite time? I guess I am.
The wormhole does bring them our way, doesn't it?
Everyone wants a piece of the new frontier.
And I'm sure you've already tried to sell it to a few of them.
You don't know what any of this is about, do you? You work here. You see these people every day, how they live, and you just don't get it.
Welcome to Audio Umox, where you'll get an earful of our thoughts on the seminal Star Trek series Deep Space Nine. 176 episodes of incredible Star Trek goodness that were aired between January of 93 and June of 99. I'm Simon Van Gelder.
And I'm John Christopher.
And you are joining us for a discussion of the first episode. And I want to interrupt for a moment before we get going about Emissary, which is the two-part pilot for Deep Space Nine. I have an artifact. I don't have it here. I know. I know. It's pretty exciting.
Yes.
And yeah. I don't have it in front of me, but I have it, and I want to refer to it. I have the actual show Bible.
Okay.
If you don't know, if you write for a TV show or a TV show gets started and they want writers to write for it, they create what's called a Bible, which is like, here's all the characters, here's the layout, here's the situation. This is kind of like the framework that you must operate in to write about our show. I have a copy of that signed by series creators Rick Berman and Michael Piller. I bought it off like the Home Shopping Network 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I found it in my basement when I was cleaning up the other day, so I haven't had time to go through it again, so I'd like time to go through it, but I didn't want to wait. I wanted us to go ahead and start talking about Emissary, the pilot episode, but sure. I reserve the right to go down a rabbit hole or a wormhole, as some would say. I want to finger that wormhole with a discussion about the Bible, but let's
have like an orb, like one of the orb
just flying around. The orbs, which kind of look like the orbs kind of to me look like they
look like a shake weight to me.
A shake weight? Well, no. You know what they look like to me is like a what do you call it? A kitchen timer with sand in it. They seem, you know what I mean? Like they're like shaped like an 8, and then it's like the sand is. Yeah. So, but Emissary is the original pilot episode. It aired January 3rd, 1993. And by the way, if you're joining us for the first time, if you want all the expository shite about Audio Umox, and if you want your lobes to be stroked in that regard, you need to go back to episode 1 of this podcast, easily findable on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever else this show is held. But John Christopher and I, Simon Van Gelder, are going to get on with Emissary. You know, it occurred to me, John, that exposition, and I'm a writer, as you know. I've written I've written a few books, and exposition is always the toughest part of storytelling, because there's a certain amount of let's establish where we are, and some readers are like, oh crap, I don't care, just get to it. Right. I've dated some
action. Especially in science fiction in particular, they want the action, they want
I've dated some women like this. I've dated women who are just like,
haven't we all?
Quit with the whining and dining. Just
get to business.
Get after it.
To business.
Yeah, get after it. So, all right. So we're together. We'll just kind of go through this, shall we? We're going to go through part 1 of Emissary. We're going to break it in 2 here. I'm just going to tell you right now. I doubt we'll get through the whole show for this episode because time constraints, etc.
Yeah, there's so much to cover. One and really the first half is really primarily about breaking away from the Next Generation series.
Such a great point, because let's go back. 1993. Everybody's like, "Oh man, I dig Patrick Stewart. I dig Jonathan Frakes and the way he swings his leg, and his balls over the chair when he sits down."
Yeah. Acts like walks like
John Wayne with a hemorrhoid issue.
Yeah, there you go.
There's all that, and Data with his overacting and all that.
I want to be a real boy.
Yeah. If you're familiar with TNG, you know that Commander or Captain Picard was taken captive by the Borg and was made into a hybrid creature called Locutus. He is pretty cutest, I must admit. He is. And he is the vessel from which the Federation is going to be destroyed, and they have a massive...
Be assimilated.
Exactly. They are assimilated. There's a massive battle at the Star Wolf 359.
Yes.
Benjamin Sisko, a fit, incredibly vibrant young executive officer of the starship Saratoga, is first officer to a Vulcan captain of the Saratoga, by the way, played by, you know who played him?
I do not.
Well, it's interesting because
so for those of you who have skipped episode 1, okay, Simon has this level of detail and depth that is, can only be surpassed by someone on that Saturday Night Live episode.
Get a life.
And for me, I enjoy the show at maybe a level that's not quite as deep as Simon's, but I enjoy it from a much more kind of visceral level where I'm trying to experience the characters in some cases for the very first time, and just enjoying the comedy of the show, and the uniqueness of the show. But anyway, the two of us are approaching this series from 2 very different perspectives, with Simon being the one with much greater technical acumen than I am related to the show, its characters, and the actors playing those characters.
I think I've been insulted, but
I think it's a compliment. There's a compliment in there somewhere.
All right.
You have much greater level of detail and knowledge than I do.
Okay, well, fair enough. And that's what's, we think, going to make Audio Umox more fun for you, is because it'll be the perspective of a Star Trek geek and a guy who appreciates Star Trek, but is not immersed in every little detail. So the Saratoga, the captain is a Vulcan, and Saratoga is a Miranda class starship, very similar to, if you're a Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan fan, it's a very similar design. It's basically the same design, but it's been updated. And in 2365, it was under the command of Captain Martin Jedlicka. He was assigned to Captain Saratoga on a deep space exploration mission in Sector 002. But prior to that, Lieutenant Commander Benjamin Sisko was the first officer, and during that time, the ship undertook missions to a lot of places I can't pronounce. And the point is, the guy who played the Vulcan commander of the Saratoga in the Emissary episode was John Noah Hertzler, which actually was J.G. Hertzler later, who played Commander or General Martok, as well as some other characters in DS9. It was his first big role in Star Trek. Was as So
there's a lot of recycling.
Yes, there's a lot of recycling
on friendly actors that they know and they trust.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the Saratoga was part of the Federation fleet that engaged the Borg at Wolf 359. It was among the first ships to arrive. It engaged the Borg cube. I think it was with the USS Gage, the Melbourne, and the Kyushu. Saratoga was destroyed at the battle, although several escape pods were able to leave the ship, and that's where you see Lieutenant Commander Sisko get away. His Bolian chief of security helps him get away, but before it all happens,
that's the really pale guy with
the blue guy with the thing. Bolians later, or in TNG, Bolians are strictly there to cut your hair, which is funny because they don't have any hair. But like the Bolian barber on TNG is a kind of a running joke. So you got that. But so anyway, for this scene, the crew does the full Wrath of Khan simulation. You know, I mean, there's no circuit breakers. Things blow up in people's faces without making too much fun. Long story short, Sisko gets below decks and finds that his wife Jennifer is dead. And the Bolian find Jake, his young, like 5 or 6 year old son. He's alive. They get him.
Yeah, maybe 8.
Well, at that time he's younger because 3 years later is when DS9 starts. Whatever. But the point is, you see Sisko. I mean, they literally have to haul Sisko away. They have to drag him away from the body of his wife, and he's like, "We just can't leave her," you know. And it's a very moving scene. And I want to stop for just a second here talking about the plot and just say, as a Star Trek fan, and again, if you haven't heard episode 1, I go all the way back basically to the beginning on this deal. When I heard that Avery Brooks was the captain, the new captain on the new Star Trek, okay, I watched Spencer for Hire where he played Hawk. And Hawk's biggest line ever was, You ready? Did you get that? Wait, let me do it again. He was the biggest badass. I mean, Robert Urich, God bless his soul, was fine as Spencer. He really wasn't quite the Spencer that you read in the books, but Avery Brooks was the embodiment of Hawk. And when I heard that badass was going to be the captain, I was beyond excited. So then I see the episode, and wait, Hawk doesn't have a beard, and he's got like kind of a dorky haircut, and he's got a wife and a kid, and he's crying because, and I was just like, okay, all right then, all right, I'll play along. So anyway, that's where we are. So they save Jake. The Bolian says, your wife's dead, get on the damn escape pod. And so, like R2 and C-3PO, they get on an escape pod, and there's a really great scene. Do you remember this scene there, John, where the escape pod, Sisko is like defeated, and he's just sitting there, and all of a sudden the escape pod lurches and flies away from the Saratoga, and he turns and looks, and in the reflection of the glass of the escape pod, you see the destruction of the Saratoga. Do you remember that scene?
I do. Yeah, and for me, again, not having a level of detail, I didn't know what his role was on the Saratoga. I thought he was initially. I thought he was the captain of that ship.
Oh, but if you look at his pips on his collar, he's a lieutenant commander, and the Vulcan is a captain.
Right. Again, so I made assumptions based on my just initial impressions, but still seeing watching that ship explode and be blown to bits as he's the or among the last people to depart that ship. It was pretty impressive.
Well, right, and The thing about the being a lieutenant commander, he was the executive officer. He was the first officer of the Saratoga.
Right.
And he had a family on board. And the thing that got me about that scene is that I think if it had just been Sisko and his wife Jennifer, and he had the Bolian had said, "Here's, Commander, here's Jennifer. She's dead." If Jake hadn't existed, if there had been no kid, I frankly think Sisko would have lost his mind and stayed.
Oh, you think so?
I don't think there's any way that that Ben Sisko would have left the Saratoga, other than he had to. I mean, you're a parent. You're a parent. I'm a parent, right? If something happens, God forbid, to our spouse, we have no choice. We have to go on, right? We have to take care of our children. But if we don't have children and something happens to the loves of our lives, you tell me.
Be a lot tougher.
You were in the military. Let's put you in this. Assuming they allowed like husband and wife in the same platoon. Okay, let's just assume. If it was just you two and she was the love of your life, maybe you wouldn't leave the war zone. But if you had a kid waiting back.
Yeah, as a military person, I would say my initial instinct, spouse with me or not, would be to continue to fight, even without shields, even without protection.
But he doesn't have any weapons. The ship is dead in space. I mean, the Borg have carved it up like a turkey.
Yeah, I'm not saying it would be rational.
Oh, okay. So. Fair enough. Okay. Well, so the other thing about Sisko, okay, he is not only is he the first Star Trek leader who is not a captain. He doesn't have the rank of captain. He's a lieutenant commander, but then by the time we catch up to him 3 years later for Deep Space Nine, he's a full commander. Right. I think the time between then and DS9, he was running the Utopia Planitia shipyards where they built ships for the Federation. Yeah. But he was also the first African American, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think obviously in space that he would. Hopefully, he wasn't the first African American.
Well,
fleet. But yes, on the series to get that kind of promotion, that harkens back to some of the things that Roddenberry did in the original series, which is go beyond race, go beyond gender. So yeah, I find that interesting as well. Although I don't want to get too far ahead, but some of the comments about Kira and Nerys that are made or in this initial episode, are a little bit sexist, but.
Well, yeah, and fair enough. I guess I was stepping outside of the mythos and just saying, for 1993, we're going to make an African American a captain, so to speak, or the lead. It was a step, and
absolutely. And if you look at what the TV landscape looked like, stepping outside of the show itself and looking at the TV landscape, really the only black man that had a leading role in a TV series was Cosby.
Theo!
And that was
somebody put something in my hypo spray. I can't do a good Bill Cosby. Yeah, and unfortunately at this point
that didn't turn out well.
No, it's sad when your name becomes like a verb. You've been Cosby'd.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good point though. But it was a big deal, and Avery Brooks, the badass that he was in Spencer for Hire, I was excited about. But you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself, because who's to say that Ben Sisko, who frankly is a wreck, he's an emotional wreck.
Yeah. Even 3 years later, he's still just eaten up with the loss of his wife, it's affected his career if he's at a shipyard instead of commanding a starship. It
seems he might have taken a detour in his career, didn't he? You wonder if maybe he got offered a command and deflected, instead said, I'll build ships, but I don't want to command ships.
Right. Yeah, I need to take care of my son.
I got to take care of my kid. So 3 years later, we fast forward. We're going to just get past the Utopia Planitia shipyards, and it's 3 years later, and Jake Sisko, his son, the Sisko kid, is fishing kind of like Huck Finn off a dock, and this little.
Although the whole concept of wearing a sweater with overalls,
and only one.
Yeah, only hooked on one side.
Only hooked on one side. Yeah. It's
that kind of bothers me.
It's a little on the nose. Let's just be honest, but.
Yeah,
I get it. And it turns out they're on a holodeck. And that kind of, they have a little chat, and then it goes right into the credits sequence, which is, to be fair, deadly dull. Because what you have is this comet and the music by Dennis McCarthy, which is quite good. And you have this comet go by, and then you pass the comet, and then all of a sudden, there's Terok Nor, a.k.a. Deep Space Nine. And, hello, there's not anything going on there. There's not a ship orbiting it. There's nobody docked on it. There's nobody throwing up out a porthole from quarks. There's nothing happening on. It's just deep bore 9. It's just and it's just it's very the music is great, but it's just very much about a muchness, I think.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mentioned it in our first podcast. Previously there was some exposition. There was a mission statement on the previous, the original series on the Next Generation, where here there really wasn't a mission statement. So that seemed to be a glaring absence during the opening credits.
Right. So then once the tedious credits are done, we get in there and we realize that the episode, by the way, directed by David Carson, who I believe directed a couple of the TNG movies, theatrical pictures, by the way. Anyway, David Carson. We arrive and we realize that, oh, hello, on Deep Space Nine there's going to be a couple of familiar faces, including Chief Miles O'Brien, who is the guy who started out he was in the pilot of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which was called, what was that called? Oh crap!
You got me.
Oh my God! I can't believe I'm blanking on the pilot. So there's like dozens. Okay, there's 2 listeners going, "You idiot! It was." Encounter at Farpoint, and
there you go. Far.
Yeah, which was horrendous. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We go to a ship or a space station that the Cardassians. Just remember Strother Martin, Dirk Benedict, Heather Menzies. Go to our first episode if you don't know what we're talking about.
Snake neck
trick.
All right.
Oh, sorry. The Cardassian station Terok Nor, which has been basically abandoned and given to the Bajorans. The Bajorans know damn well they cannot, after 50 years of occupation, defend it themselves, so they bring in the Federation as co-partners or co-managers or co-minglers, whatever.
Yeah.
And we are introduced to the cast of characters. But before anything happens, we know that Sisko is invited. We know it's a virtually defenseless station because the Cardassians leave it virtually defenseless, and we're introduced to Ensign Rowe. No, it should have been Ensign Rowe. They offered the part to Michelle Forbes, is what I understand, and she turned it down. So it's Major Kira
Nerys.
Kira Nerys, right? And if you've got some Major Kira,
little Dutch boy haircut,
with her little Dutch boy haircut and her little orange outfit, which by the way looks kind of saggy and baggy in the butt.
I didn't notice the butt so much as the fabric. It looked like that was Visa, wasn't it? It's America's Freedom fabric.
I think it was America's Freedom fabric. Yeah. It wasn't as appealing on her as subsequent seasons when they really got after it with the costumes with Nana Visitor.
Nana.
That's quite a name.
The Visitor.
Nana.
Yes. Nana.
Or Nana. Your Nana. Your Nana had a dumpy.
Yeah, it was not, compared to The Next Generation, which had quite clingy, camel-toe-y outfits. This was much less clean. Even Avery Brooks' costume, he looked like he was. I wasn't sure if he was in charge of of Deep Space Nine, or whether he was there to do some plumbing or painting or something.
He was swimming in that outfit. It didn't look that great.
It was a little loose. It was a little loose.
Loose.
Not that I wanted it to look like Picard's white shorts when he was on Ryza.
Oh, you did not want Picard's moose knuckle. No. All right. So Sisko is given opportunity by a Vedek to commune with the prophets. He politely declines. Miles O'Brien, we're told that he has a wife, Cake Hole, from TNG, who also was like on MASH, that actress Rosalind Shaw, and she's just in a bad mood all the time. By the way, that's a running thing with Cake Hole, is she's always in a bad mood, and you just want to say, "Shut your cake hole!"
Shut your cake hole. Shut your cake hole.
But I digress. So Captain Picard, the Enterprise is orbiting finally and checks in there to DS9, and he wants to see Sisko. And, we're given more, kind of more insight in between on Jake and Ben and their great relationship from the get-go. So the Sisko kid and his dad, there's a clear... I believe that from moment one, that those two loved each other. I don't know about you.
Yes.
I believe that.
Yes, I did, because Captain Sisko seemed, or Commander Sisko... Is he Captain? Or just Commander?
He's Commander. Commander. Okay. He does not get promoted right away.
His rank is not captain. It's just commander.
He is commander, and since it's not a starship, they don't call him captain. Now, if he were a captain of a ship, and even though he was a lieutenant commander or a lieutenant, if he was running the ship, they'd call him captain out of formality. It's not a ship; it's a space station.
Got it.
Commander Sisko.
Okay. So
you should know that, being in the military.
We digress. Oh, I was not in the Navy.
True.
So and they follow much more closely.
You
to
were
the
an
naval,
officer, however.
Naval traditions. I was an Army guy. So I just
you jumped out of perfectly good airplanes.
I just jumped out of airplanes and worked on green screen computers. That was it. For Commander Sisko, what I saw was in his day-to-day interaction with other people in which he worked, it was very professional. His voice was very deep, and he was quite stern.
Did that work on you when you were in the Army, by the way?
It did.
Okay.
It did. I had a commander, a major that was. I always knew when he was angry, because his voice would lower about an octave, and I also knew that he was capable of just picking me up like a rag doll. But again, I digress.
Were you hoping he would do
when
that?
He interacted with people, other people on the station,
mm-hmm.
It was it was pretty much very businesslike. And then when he would see Jake, it was you could see that smile,
the joy,
and the joy of a father.
Do you have that joy when you see your kids? I don't ever see you.
I do.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So Kira, and this leads us, by the way, to a regular feature on Deep Space Nine, which we have a moment which is a major Kira, and that's where an actor is overacting. I felt that Nana Visitor, Nana.
Yes.
I know this because I was at a con and she said, "My name is Nana,
Nana,
not Nana Visitor." I just felt like Na 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 na. Hey, beam down.
Visitor. Yeah.
Okay. She tended to kind of overcompensate for the writing with some overacting, I thought. She was, much in the same way that, frankly, Tasha Yar did in TNG. Oh, my God. Do you remember how bad she was, Denise Crosby?
Yes, yes.
She was an actress who could do better than the material and wanted so bad to stretch the material, she ended up looking like she was overacting. I think we see that with Nana. But
I would tend to agree.
But the good news is, that doesn't last forever, but we're going to get ahead of ourselves. Another thing I noticed, by the way, is, and we're introduced to the shapeshifter, who we don't know much about, Odo, who is Constable Odo, head of security for the station. He can change his shape. And we see, of course, this is where Star Trek raids the casting couch from Benson. It starts here, where... If you ever watched Benson with you know that Rene Auberjonois was on Benson as Clayton Endicott, and he plays Odo.
The man before.
And what's funny is, he's a great actor, but he was also in the original MASH movie as Colin Mulcahy, by the way. If you watch Voyager, you know that Ethan, what is his last name? Crap. Well, anyway, the guy who played the press secretary on Benson plays Neelix on Voyager. So, just so you know, the Star Trek people were like, let's get the casting director from Benson over and see what we got here. So, but Odo, and you'll notice something between now and like the 4th or 5th episode of DS9 is that Odo's makeup goes from really shitty to okay, all right. Wouldn't you say that's about right? It went from kind of shitty to...
And I think the shows that I have seen, it did kind of bother me that a guy who's been... How old is the character?
Well, we don't know, but he's
too far.
He's not
he's been
hundreds
around
of years
a while.
old, but he's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't figured out how to make an ear. Come on.
And what's funny is because you see times when he's like turns into like another creature, like a winged bird thing, and he's perfect. Or
even on this episode, he becomes a perfectly shaped bag
scrotum.
with every detail, the stitching, and he can't do an ear. Come on.
If you can do a scrotum with all the wrinkles, and I don't get. Yeah, so I'm that conceit. I'm willing to give him, but I question it. So, and then when somebody throws like a bolo through his head.
Yes.
In the episode,
Yes.
But okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we're kind of going through the whole dramatis personae, and then Quark. What an original name for, by the way, a character in space. Quark, a Ferengi, who essentially, by the way, yes, his masturbatory leanings or sexual leanings do arrive us at Audio Umox, which is
That's right.
the namesake of our show. Umox being, if you're a Ferengi, you have massive ears, and apparently if a member of the opposite sex, or if you're gay, the same sex, not that there's anything wrong with that, strokes no judging. They stroke those lobes until you get off.
just the whole concept of massaging your ears, of stroking and massaging physical contact with the ears brings erotic pleasure, and hence our show. We're hoping that we bring pleasure to your auditory canal.
I think we might. I think we're too late on that. We're already getting to like way too. We're not even going to get through the first commercial break of Emissary, by the way, because we're almost out of time. Let's just quickly run through. We meet Quark. Nog, his nephew, son of Rom, who we see briefly, stole something. There's a plea bargain. Then we have. Let's get through. We need to get through this one scene before we call it a day for this episode of Audio Umox, and that is where Jean-Luc Picard basically is giving Sisko his marching orders. Picard being a captain and the commander, not only a captain, but captain of the Federation flagship, which is patrolling that sector. He's like, Commander, you are hereby requested to get your ass in here and listen to my shiz. And he does that. And
before he gets too far into that, for me, who does he know, or who is he hitting on Bajor? But does that throw back to an old Next Generation episode? Because he's really got it bad for the people of Bajor.
Who does?
Picard.
Well, I don't think that's true.
He's like, do everything you can short of violating the Prime Directive.
No,
that's a quote.
And I'm going to tell you why. Because you'll notice that he pronounces it Bajor in this scene.
Yes.
He doesn't say Bajor, which he does, by the way, by the end of the episode. But in this beginning scene, he's like, Bajor. It's like the director, David Carson, not pull him aside and go, Sir Patrick, although he wasn't a sir by then, listen, it's pronounced Bajor. And he's like, certainly, Bajor. So, I don't know. I think it's just he got his orders. Picard, though, seems really thrown off because Sisko basically just doesn't waste any time saying, what, John? What does he say to him?
Well, basically, you killed my wife. You killed the entire crew of the ship on which I worked, and I think you really gave me a pretty shitty deal here. You ruined my life, and for me, I find it kind of humorous because the look on Picard's face is like, this is obviously not the first time he's heard this argument, and it's like every time he's at waiting in line at the Toys R Us or whatever,
the Federation Starbucks, he's gonna order his venti, soy.
You killed my dog, you killed my family, whatever. So anyway, he plays it all cool. And just kind of,
but he has a look like somebody farted in his face for the 50th time, and he's just like,
but not. There's no shock.
No
apology either.
No, none.
It's like you should have read the briefing on it from Starfleet, which was that I had been taken over and I was Locutus, and you should know better than to confront me on this issue.
I may not have a laser pointer stuck to my forehead, but you need to know better, Sisko.
And go do your job.
And go do your job. And maybe and by the way, no, but you're right. There's a weariness to Picard. Well, it's a sadness too, because Picard knows full well he
killed a lot of people.
Yeah, and
yes, there was a shirt tug involved in that interaction.
Oh, you mean the Picard maneuver? It was executed during that scene.
It was.
No, skillful scene between two very charismatic actors. I hate to do this, John, but we have blathered on for quite a while. We're not even going to get to the halfway mark on Emissary, so we're going to have to stop here with, Sisko basically saying, I want to resign, and I may do that. And Picard's like, oh, great. Well, you know what? Until you figure that shit out, you're going to have to deal with this. Here's your orders, yada, yada, yada. And
single dads don't get starship assignments.
Right. Single dads, yeah. And maybe you should have thought of that. Maybe none of this would have happened. And by the way, how's Robert Urich doing? All right. As you can tell, we're not in a big hurry to get through all 176 episodes. And we hope you're not either.
Nothing but time.
Huh?
We've got nothing but time.
We got nothing, well, as far as we know. But I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed just dipping our toe into the Emissarian waters. How about this? We'll make a deal with you. Our next episode, we will get through all of Emissary. We will We will cover all of that, and then we can kind of get past the pilot episode and get right into the Deep Space Nine mythos. But you know what? We really can't do that until we disentangle Deep Space Nine fully from TNG, and that's not going to happen until Emissary is complete.
True.
You're going to get appearances from members of the TNG crew until the end of this episode, and we understand that. Just as a reminder, if you have a comment about the show, really simple. If you want to email us with some heavy details, real simple. Go to audioumox@gmail.com. That's audio, AUDIO, umox, OOMOX. There's no space there, but audioumox@gmail.com. And we're also on the Twitter at twitter.com/Umox podcast, and that's OOMOX podcast. And we'd be honored if you followed us. We'd be honored if you give us a comment, if you think you're full of shit, whatever. And
share us as well.
Share us.
The more we're shared, the more we can do, and that would be great as well.
And frankly, a review at this point. If you can give us a review of the show on iTunes in particular, that would be mucho apreciado. It helps us. Well, the more
yes, positive reviews are fantastic. They're just going to help us help us make you laugh and do the things that we love to do and hope you love to listen to.
And the more reviews we get, the higher we get to the top in iTunes. And these first few episodes will determine if we get to be named a new and noteworthy podcast by iTunes, which is a huge deal. So, listen, I'll just say it. We are your Deep Space Nine podcast, and we want to hear from you. And if there's things we need to cover or things you want to know more about, let us know. Frankly, we don't think there's another Deep Space Nine podcast of our caliber out there, and we want to continue our high standards with you. So, John Christopher, is there anything else we want to add to this episode?
I'm excited about getting really getting into Emissary and
Major Kira.
And Major Kira. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
We haven't even got into Dax yet.
And Dax. Yes.
Oof.
Yes.
Woof.
Woof. Yes. Woof. That's way on down.
That's true. Yes, that's true. We got a while before Woof gets involved.
Before, yeah.
But we will get there. So
much to look forward to. But lots of fun, and let me just say, I truly appreciate your depth of knowledge. For me, it's obviously much more cursory. I get to have fun with the show at the expense of your research and depth of knowledge, and hopefully the two of us with the two different angles can just have fun and enjoy learning more about the show.
Of that, I have no doubt. I mean, you bring a freshness to this that's important, and a level of humor, and enough back patting. But we'll be back next week. Count on us every week with a new episode of Audio Umox. We're not quite at the point where we're going to talk about lobes. I don't know if we have a Deep Sex 9 for this yet, since we're so early on. So maybe we'll hold that off till next time.
I have one ready.
Oh, you've already got a Deep Sex 9 lined up?
Absolutely, I do. Ooh. But we have to get to that scene before I can.
All right, look, I'm just going to tell you right now, it can't be Captain Picard. That's just not fair.
No.
Okay, very good. All right.
Not yet.
All right then. Well, again, he is
John Christopher.
And I am Simon Van Gelder, and you have had your lobes tingled on Audio Umox. We'll see you, you'll hear us next time.